I think this episode wins the award for making me cry the fastest. That's for sure.
Wait till you read the book.
I can't. I don't even know if I could read it yet. Just the little bit he read, I was so hard not to just sit there and bawl my eyes out. I can't wait for you guys to hear it, and I can't wait for this book to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so grateful that I was able to read. As I said, I've only got to chapter 4, and I will be reading it tonight. However, it is a really difficult topic to be talked about because suicide is never the comfortable conversation to have with anybody, if they're close family members or friends from afar. But Scott has incredible ability to be able to really, speak about this topic and this experience in a way that will surprise you, honestly. So it's not a dark book. I didn't feel it was dark. It was a dark topic, but the lightness that he is able to express through words is a must read. So you've got to remember the name Scott Cramer and his book that is called Picking Up the Pieces. Daily Dad, Picking Up the Pieces.
You are listening to Seek Purpose, the podcast, where guests share how they have survived their pain, explored their passions, and found their purpose.
We are the platform that gives a voice to journeys of recovery and the opportunity to get inspired by those who have overcome their hurts, habits, and hang-ups.
You've found your pathway to recovery. Now it's time to find your pathway to purpose.
Subscribe to this show, join our online community, and become a purpose seeker today.
Yeah, we are talking today about picking up the pieces after loss and finding purpose through grief. We are so excited to have you here, Scott, to share such a difficult story. And before we get started, I just want to put a trigger warning out there. This is a very hard topic for a lot of people. We have put the suicide hotlines for Canada and US up on the screen here. They are also listed in the show notes, as well as the BC Crisis Center. So if you do need help, please reach out and get that support right away. And Scott, is there anything we missed? Would you like to introduce yourself a little more?
Well, my name is Scott. Nice to meet you all. I'm actually very proud to attend, your forum here. I've been watching it over the last year, and it's it's been a joy to watch, and it's been it's kind of been very helpful when going through these dark times and through these hard times, and it's nice to see the positive energy and the smiles, and it's we miss you. Yeah. So, Yeah.
Awesome. We know this is a really difficult topic, and how you have gone through the most difficult thing that I think a person can go through in recovery is just loss and grief. Having 2 teenage daughters, I think any child is difficult, but when you're dealing with teenagers that look at life in a different way as a toddler or a young person does, and experiencing something like this is really, as you use the word, catastrophic. But what you've done, and I haven't read the whole book, but I'm telling you, I couldn't put it down. He brought me to tears. The way that you write and the way you take an experience and a moment in time and take us there in written word is incredible. Like, definitely God driven. I have to go back tonight and continue to read it because, not that what the experience was good, but just how you were able to take me to a place that I could relate with the feelings and the experience of different things that have happened in my life, not on the same, topic, obviously, as dealing with grief and loss or suicide, but definitely, connections for sure. Mm-hmm. So we really want to hear the story. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Scott has written a book, as we said in our intro, in regards to losing his wife to suicide. And we'd like to kind of have you take us through that journey.
Yeah, it happened in May, end of May, 2019. And I refer to it as the event. Mm-hmm. My wife and I were currently separated at that time. But we were great co-parents. I mean, we loved each other dearly. I mean, we had keys to each other's places. I'd come home and there'd be a coffee maker, or there'd be food in the fridge, and we didn't have set times as to when we were going to take the children. It was just that when as needed, and when we made our schedules flexible. We spent a lot of time together with holidays, birthdays, and I'd go and mow her lawn. I would go to when she was a nurse. She was a registered nurse, and she would work evening shifts and night shifts. So I'd go and sleep on her couch. And so we wanted to, set an example to our children that even though we were apart, as a family, as husband and wife, we were still a family. But it was a new way to look at a family, and and then it was totally unexpected. But looking back, you start to think, well, why didn't I see that, and why didn't I recognize that? So associated with that can be a lot of survivor's guilt that's involved. I should have been more aware. I should have been more conscious. I should have been this, should have been that. And then how do you deal with that, right? And so maybe I should just read a little bit of the first chapter. Would you mind if I did that at all?
That would be beautiful. I'd love that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I have it here. Chapter 1, The Event Horizon. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming, dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven. The event horizon for a black hole in space is that edge of the anomaly where the gravitational pull from the black hole is too great to escape from. A severely distorted fabric of space and time. It's where you face the darkness knowing there is no way out of the impending disaster. It is terrifying, desperate, and hopeless. It is in that edge before you get pulled into oblivion is where you get right with yourself, God, and others. It's where surrender, acceptance, and non-resistance become part of you. It is a place where you face your fear, and despite it, you move forward into the unknown. It is also that place where you can decide to become frozen in fear, guilt, shame, remorse, and be self-destructive in many forms. May 30th, 2019 was that edge of insanity. It was my event horizon, an event that shattered my existence, changed all form around me, destroyed myself/ego. I was broken into fine shards of glass that cut deep into my soul. It was an event from which there was no escape. What road was I going to take? What is courage? What is love? What is surrender? Little did I know, my whole life had prepared me for that moment. Mr. Cramer, I'm sorry to inform you that your wife has passed away. We found her in the car in the garage. This was a moment of incomprehensible shock and pain that I could never be able to articulate into proper words. My body and consciousness were shattered into horror, denial, and utter despair. My understanding of the event was not complete. At first, I thought it was a joke. This was Thursday. Let's go back to Monday. So, yeah, it was,
Get me crying.
I know. Yeah. So, I'll take you a little further down here. There's a little bit of filler there, but oops. So Thursday, May 30th, 2019. I woke up, felt a bit better, a bit scared and uneasy. I'd made a commitment to a friend/fellow realtor to help with an open house. This took me to Vancouver, about a 50-minute drive at best times away from our homes. The day was going well. It was nice out, warm, and not too hot, just perfect. The open house went well. I met some great potential clients, and I considered it a success. Around 3 p.m., my older daughter, who was still living with her mother, called me distressed that she hadn't heard from her mom since the previous day. She assumed she had worked a night shift, and been sleeping. When she checked the bedroom, her mom was not there. She tried calling and texting her to no avail. I tried to reassure her that her mom was either shopping or spending some time to herself. She had done this before and always came home. Dread, darkness, fear crept up from the cracks in my soul. Caitlin told me that she called Debbie's friend Mary to come over. I told Caitlin I was on my way. It was 5 p.m., rush hour, bumper-to-bumper traffic, a slow crawl. Mary called me and I was trying to explain that Debbie sometimes does this. Mary said she was going to call the police. Now the fear and the dread were staring me in the face. I was calling desperately to Debbie. I was texting and driving, trying to get Debbie to respond. A myriad of things had gone through my head of what were the possibilities. Still stuck in traffic, halfway home, my body was tingling. I was sweating and angry. How could she do this? Why is she creating this drama? What the fuck? 5:30 p.m., Mary calls me. Scott, come home now. Just come home now. Why? What's going on? I replied. Just come home now. Is she okay? Is she alive? Come home now, she says and hangs up. I'm on full-on fear. I call my realtor friend. She tries her best to reassure me. What else could I do? What else could she do? 5:45, the police call me. His tone was of a cheerful charm, asking me where I was and not to rush, take my time, and they would see me soon. Phew, that brought me down from the trees of anxiety. I started to think, okay, they have her. Maybe she's drunk. Maybe she is having an episode and they have her in a car. It's going to be okay. Just breathe. I learned that those breaths were the last breaths. The last 15 minutes of hope breathing. Feeling normal breaths of before, not after. I arrived on the street of Debbie's home and turned the corner. Before me were 4 police cars in front of her home. A tense sharpness and a constricting grip wrapped itself inside my chest. My arms went weak, my legs started to shake. I still clung on to hope. I scanned the cars, hoping to see her in the back seat. I was hoping that she had an episode and was sitting in the back of one of them. I didn't see her. Okay, maybe she's in the house sitting with Caitlin. Compose yourself. Be calm. Park the car. I put the car in park, opened the door, got out, and started walking up the driveway where 2 constables were standing. The garage door was open. Not the door to where her car was supposed to be parked, but the other one. They looked like giants that were waiting for me to come for judgment. Are you Mr. Cramer? Yes, I am, I replied. Do you have any identification? I checked my pockets. Oh shit, I left my wallet in the car. I'll be right back. I turned around to walk back to the car. My heart was in my chest. My soul was falling through my feet. I knew why they wanted to see my ID. No, it cannot be. Maybe she's in the house. Despair, fear, anxiety, desperation. I grabbed my wallet. I walked back to the driveway. It was like I'd done an all-day workout and could barely move from the lack of energy and weakness. My legs were rubber. It took all that I had to take those final steps to the attending police. I started to shake. My face became flush. My voice was that of a young child that was about to be confronted with something he did not want to perceive. I handed the policeman my ID, with shaking hands, barely able to lift them up to meet him to turn over my driver's license. As I did, a 3rd constable walked up to my left. They were an impenetrable wall of mass, muscle, weapons, and authority. After he glanced at my ID, he looked at me. He looked me in the eyes and said those faithful words. Words I will never forget. Words that, to this day, are hard to repeat. A silent scream of despair and horror. A flash of the beautiful wife and a lifetime of loving memories. Gone. I had to see her. I had to hold her. I had to shake her. I rushed towards the garage. My feet left the ground as the constables restrained me from both sides in anticipation, like they have done many times before. They laid me down gently on the concrete driveway. The first officer had my head in his hand and he placed me on the ground. They were gentlemen. They felt my pain. Men of strength, men of authority, men of compassion. My vision was black. An utter feeling of loss and fear overcame me. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I identify with it so much. Mm-hmm. I lost my brother in August to an overdose.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And before that, when I first got sober, my aunt, I went to go pick up my kids from my mom's house, and she was freaking out because someone had called and said that they had killed my aunt. And so I remember in the car thinking like, oh my God, my family's such fucking drama. Like, obviously she's fine. Like, my brain wouldn't even go there. So when you're talking about that, you know, like, why are you being so dramatic? Like, it literally is like, you can't fathom this being real. And even with my brother, the same thing. Like, it just was just impossible that this was actually happening. And it changes like your perception of life in an instant. And I'm just so sorry you went through that. But I'm so honored and feel so blessed that I get to hear this story. And I know you're going to change a lot of lives because like your words, I can feel my own experience through them. So I know a lot of people are going to relate to that and feel a little bit of connection to you through that story. 100%. I can't wait to read the rest of it. Oh my God.
Well, thank you. Yeah, there's two folds as the reason why I wrote this book. The first one was to help those that survive, you know, losing a loved one. And you know, and my daughters and I lost a loved one in one of the most painful ways possible. And also I wrote it for those that are thinking the same thoughts Debbie thought. You know, so it's a look into what it does to the family and what is life like afterwards without them. And because I truly believe that in those moments before someone takes their life, I guess there's a story of a fellow that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and he survived. And he said that after he jumped, he regretted doing it. He wanted to live. And so I wanted to take the reader into what it's like, what it's really like. And the only way I can describe it is like that. I wanted to take the approach, like right away in the book, I take you right into the event of what happened. You know, there was a movie called, you know, Saving Private Ryan. You know, they start the movie off with the soldiers landing on Normandy Beach. And, you know, a lot of and there was no words. All you did was saw bullets flying and bombs and, you know, blood and, you know, men with arms blown off. And, you know, and you could feel the sheer terror. And you could feel the, you know, the fear that this soldier was going through, and it held your attention because you're like, okay, well, what's the rest of the story? You know, how did he get out of that, right? You know, and so that's, you know, the intention behind this for sure.
Well, that's so beautiful and absolutely needed today. I know that suicides are on the rise, drug overdoses are on the rise, mental health struggles are just, everyone's dealing with it now with everyone being in isolation. I don't think there's no one that isn't touched by mental health. And so again, we just want to reiterate, please, if you are struggling, there's some numbers on our screen here. They're in the description. Call, reach out, start talking to someone. Talking to people saved my life. Getting out what was inside of me and not having to live with it in here saved my life. I really want to know, what was the process of picking up the pieces after that? Like, did you have any resources available to you? Did you have to seek those out? Can you take us through what happened after that? How did you and your daughters get support to get through something so horrific and tragic?
Well, yeah, there was a trauma counselor on there. The police, the RCMP provided some, you know, a trauma counselor at the scene, and they also provide aftercare support too as well. In our case, the Ministry of Children and Family, the BC government, they stepped in because of the nature of how she passed away, and they stepped in a good way. They provided all of the resources and all of the help that we needed. We were provided with youth workers. We were provided with family counselor. And we took full advantage of the resources that they had available. And it's free. The government pays for it. So, and the counseling through the police is free too as well. So there are things, counseling is available and for everyone, in these cases. So, yeah.
Was there a specific thing in counseling that's kind of helped you come to terms with what has happened? I mean, you're probably still in the grieving process. I know it's only been a few years and there's no timestamp on grief whatsoever. I mean, I'm about 8 months into it now, and there's sometimes it feels like it's just happened yesterday, and sometimes it feels like it didn't even happen and it's just a bad dream. So, but was there something that you learned in counseling or through any of the resources that you did go to that really helped you kind of process this whole event?
Yeah. I tell a story in the book about when I went into surgery. I went in for a second surgery a few months ago, and the anesthesiologist has put sedation into me, and on my arm I have a tattoo of the semicolon, so which is the international symbol for suicide awareness, right? And my daughters and we actually each have that tattoo, and that's our bond and our promise to each other. We're not going to follow her mother, right? Their mother. And we did that earlier on. So I was sitting there with the doctor, and he asked me, "What's with this semicolon?" And I said, "Well, that's, the suicide awareness. And, my wife passed away. She was an RN, and the room just went silent. And I said, "Well, no, I'm okay with talking about it. And, I'm actually writing a book on it." And he goes, "So, how are you doing with it? And how are you dealing with it?" And the only thing I said, before I went into that dark abyss of anesthesia, I remember saying to him, I said, "It's not what I think it is. It just is. And I can't change it. And I'm subject to what I hold in mind. And I'm an infinite being, a spiritual being. And I'm not subject to that. So for me, grief is actually a healing process. It is a natural way for the body. God gave us grief to be able to handle losing a loved one. It is a way of releasing the pent-up emotions that are inside of us. What I found is that with grief, it was my thoughts that were surrounding those emotions. Thoughts that were based in fact, but I twisted them to keep myself in toxic grief. So what I've done for me when it comes to grief is to separate my thoughts from my feelings. Because my thoughts are just illusions. They're lies. They tell me lies so I can stay in my egoistic state. So I can stay in low negative energy state. So when grief comes to me, I let it flow through me. I welcome it because I know it's healing me. But the thoughts, I'm not subject to those thoughts, and I reject them. And I replace them with positive thoughts and feelings. And I remind myself of that, to separate the two. So therefore, the grief, the feeling sad, and the hurt, and the crying, it only lasts maybe 20 minutes. And then it just naturally goes away. And then all of a sudden you're doing dishes or something and you totally forgot, So it actually was a very big moment for me, right? So.
Was that something you learned through counseling, or was that, I know in your bio you mentioned you have 25 years experience in the recovery community.
Yeah.
Are those tools you picked up through your recovery journey? Was this after the grief that you learned how to process this? Or and also I'd love to tap into your spirituality and what that practice is like, that I know ego is like something that affects us all, not just addicts, alcoholics, or people in grief. Like everyone is subject to that, absolutely, and can probably use some tips and some inspiration on how to kind of get rid of those thoughts that will keep us down and low. Is that spirituality that gets you through that, and what does that look like for you?
Oh, absolutely. Like my recovery before the event is complete, and my spirituality before the event. I mean, I had 19 years in recovery up to that point. And then after that, it shot me to a different level of spirituality. I ate up every book out there that I could try to find that could help me escape these feelings, to be able to cope and deal with it. I mean, I had 2 daughters that I was alienated from, and they had landed on my lap, and I have 2 traumatized teenage daughters. What do you do? Right? You got to deal with your grief, and you got to deal with theirs too as well. So, and so I now my spirituality is that I come from the place of being aware, and I try to connect with my higher consciousness. I separate my lower level consciousness, my egoistic thinking. I'm aware of my lower level thinking, and I'm aware of my higher consciousness, and the observer. And so whenever I feel that there's negative feelings coming, I know that's my ego. And I know, and I reject those thoughts. And then I direct my thinking to positive thinking and actions, from that higher level consciousness of thinking. Changed my whole world. I see the space between the forms.
You had your Matrix moment.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know if something like that doesn't change you. I mean, well, it can either change you for the positive or the negative. You make the choice, right? Mm-hmm.
That's what I found so inspiring about listening to your journey and how you took us through those moments in your writing is incredible. And your most painful moment. There's a chapter, and I think I'm only in chapter 4, but and definitely chapter 3 or chapter 2 really talked about that moment when the rain hit you and you had that moment with you and your creator, and from the most painful moments. And that's really what Seek Purpose here is, what the stories are that we just love sharing, is how we can find that centeredness about that connection, and where it's taken you since then, since that moment, and what's happened with you. And now you've written a book, you found that purpose in your life and your passion to be able to help others, as you said earlier, walk through and know that they're not alone, and to help others on so many different levels, like not just the person that's in that moment of brokenness that just doesn't want to take another breath, to the family and everybody surrounding them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, how did I go get inspired to start writing? Is that the question? Yeah.
I'd love to know how you kind of the time frame of like, I need to write this, or were you journaling during the time? Did you?
Well, what happened? Well, with the counselor that we had, she's a very woke person, and she's a very kind person, being the family counselor that she was, and I still go to her, talk to her every week, and she and we'd have in-depth conversations, and she says, Scott, you need to write a book about this journey. So she planted the seed in my mind, and I'm like, really? Okay. And so then, from doing step 4s, in the past, it's very similar to that. Just tell your story, right? Mm. And after the event, the second day after the event, I went to a local restaurant, and I usually go there every morning for breakfast. and I know the waitresses and the ladies, and they're very nice. And that day, when they saw when I came in, and I was just sitting there, I mean, they were very supportive and helpful. So I keep going back there. So my daughter finally, I kept talking about writing this book. And my older daughter's like, Dad, will you just write the damn book and just get on with it? And so I'm like, okay. So and I said, well, I don't know, like, can you speak into the phone or something? You know, can you, and she says, Dad, listen, just set up Google Docs on your phone I think it's called Google Docs, but anyway, and just set it up and you can speak into the phone or you can type it. And so I tried the speaking in the phone thing, but then because I'm a control freak, I didn't like it when it would mess up the words, right? So, and that's one thing I had to let go, right? But so I took my iPhone and I went to the restaurant, and every morning I would just type on my phone. And I wrote this book on my phone.
Oh my God. Is everybody listening to this? Like, I mean, I'm sorry. My husband was telling me, like, I don't know how to use this computer. I don't know what to do. And how you can take something with no experience as far as how to even use the technology that's available and just take your smartphone in notes, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there was an app. It was like Google Docs. And then I just go in there and I just had Daily Dad. And then I would just start typing. And so I'd type at the restaurant. I'd be there for like 3 hours. The ladies would keep bringing me coffee, and they all knew what I was doing, that I was writing my book, and they were very supportive of that. In the mornings, sometimes I would write when I wouldn't go to the restaurant, I'd write at home. But what I would do is because I knew something inside of me told me this has to come from someplace other than just what I think this is, right? This has to come from a place of manifestation. It has to come from a higher consciousness. So what I would do is I would literally say a prayer, an intention, whatever you want to call it. And then I would meditate. And I'd listen to a guided meditation for maybe 10 minutes. And then I would try to get myself in that right state. And then I would just start typing. And a lot of it, half of that book, Suzanne and Bree, I don't even remember writing half of it. And I truly understand when Bill Wilson sat down and he wrote How It Works in 45 minutes, right? How his pencil just seemed to flow because he was in that right state of mind, in that place of consciousness, right?
I remember going to, I'm glad that you said that because I hear that a lot. I remember going to a woman's huge event, and Beth Moore is actually a Christian gospel teacher, I guess. Amazing. And I went to her weekend, I don't even know what you call them back then. What do you call them? When you go
retreat.
I wasn't even a retreat. Like when you go to a weekend conference, Woman of Faith. And she gets on the stage, and that's exactly what she says. I have no idea what this was going to be about this weekend. Just to let you guys know, FYI. And what was delivered was unbelievable, because she honestly, like, I actually was sitting in the stands going, yeah, after the first night, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But the power in what happens with that manifestation, when you take, you let go, you surrender, and you allow yourself and your being to go in that place. And I also heard of recovery I used to hear this way back in the day there's power in the written word, pen to paper. Pen to paper, when you're written in the written language, how healing that can be, and what can happen. The magic happens when we go there.
Yeah. Well, I was very scared. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying that you were in the middle of a coffee shop writing this stuff. Did you ever get into that feeling of the trauma that day was, like, in the middle of a coffee shop? Or how did you kind of protect your energy while you were writing? Was the meditation helpful for that, I guess?
Well, there were a few moments, sitting in the coffee shop where, I had to put my sunglasses on, and, because the tears were coming out. And the ladies at the restaurant, they knew me, and they had a nice spot for me in the corner. They usually put me in a corner where it was quiet, and it's from prying eyes, and they knew, and so, but I wasn't bawling my eyes out, but it was definitely tears involved for sure. But it's like, I guess Brene Brown said it right. But really the one thing that got me writing was I read Brene Brown. This is called Brene Brown, Braving the Wilderness. And she said that vulnerability creates courage and creativity. And to be able to brave the wilderness, to go stand out in that wilderness alone and do something takes courage and creativity. It creates genius, right? I'm not saying this is, please, no, don't say that. But it's being vulnerable and being okay with that vulnerability, and that's what takes courage to do that, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't wait till this is actually available. I know it's just in the beginning works here that has just been completed, and now you're kind of, that's kind of how we connected. Hey, Suzanne, want to read this? And I am just so thrilled and being honored to read this because the vulnerability that you showed and the courageousness to just sit down and take the time to do this is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love, I'm going to kind of go backwards just a little bit in regards to, because I know there's a lot of people that and you touched on it already with your journey with your daughters and how it affects the family and whatnot. And there's a part that just took me to tears, actually, when you guys were in the car talking about mom and what the girls went through at that moment and how you handled it with them was really evident in chapter 3 for sure, in how you helped the girls embrace, kind of not even embrace, but take us to how you handled the girls in.
Well, right away, like something told me, this was the day of, it's like a fog of war. Okay. And I mentioned that in the book. When you go through trauma, and I'm sure many people can relate, is that, you end up PTSD can cause the fog of war, right? You'll remember some parts of it are very vivid and some parts are very, foggy. You can't really, it's hard to recall, what's happened. But one of the most vivid parts is when we were driving in the car and my daughters just absolutely started freaking out. And that this is our fault. We did this. We were bratty teenagers, and mom started going on antidepressants once we became teenagers, and just absolutely freaking out. And I had to, a thought, a voice, an instinct, I literally pulled the car over and slammed it into park. And I said, and I told the girls, I said, you stop this right fucking now. I said, people don't kill themselves because of bratty teenagers, divorce, or money problems. I said, I know your mother better than any other person on this planet. And she was on those medications long before I met her. I said, this goes way back. It goes back, and I'm going to show you letter, girls, that she wrote. And you can read it when you're older, and you'll understand why. Why your mom, thought the way she thought, felt the way she felt, and the way she acted. And I said, so we have a choice. And I said, I have a choice. I said, I could choose to think about your mom that she's a giant asshole for what she did. You know, I could feel anger and hurt and pain and resentment and all these things towards her. And then how am I going to act? Well, I'm going to drink and do drugs and come undone like a cheap suit. I said, I can take that road, the left road, or I can take the right road, or I can have love. I can think, she was an amazing, wonderful person, kind and hardworking and just a beautiful woman. And then I would feel love for her, compassion, understanding. So how am I going to act towards her? And, I'm going to stay sober. I'm going to be present for our children. I'm going to, honor her life by stepping up, as a dad. And I told the girls, and I said, you make that choice right now. I'm not moving this fucking car. I said exactly like that. I'm not moving this fucking car till you tell me right fucking now what decision you're going to make. Are you going to take the left road to destruction, or are you going to take the right road to recovery? I said, I'm not moving this car. I said, Caitlin, what is it going to be? The right road, Dad. I said, Chantel, what's it going to be? The right road, Dad. I said, good. I said, now I know what I need to do. And because if they were going to take the left road, then there's a different approach that I needed to take, right? If they're going to take the right road, well, how can I support them in their recovery, right? I don't know where that came from. Probably, the program, I guess.
It kind of shocked me just hearing you say it. I was like, I was not expecting F-bombs to come out of here.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's totally fine. It just threw me off.
That came from a higher consciousness. That came from, that was inspired by God. God was like, fuck this shit, right?
No, I think it's raising teenagers with the reality of their conversation. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta throw those to wake them up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about Brene Brown as being kind of an inspiration for you to start your journey. Was there any other people, other resources that you tapped into, books that you read that really spoke to you and that might be beneficial to someone who's dealing with what you're going through? I
would say that Melanie Beattie and was a big influence.
Oldie but goodie.
Oh yeah, David R. Hawkins. He is Power versus Force, Transcendence, Letting Go. All of those different books, amazing books. The Dalai Lama. I've read a few of his books. The Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, like The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. Jordan Peterson. I spent a lot of time reading, it's, yeah. You can hear my dog over there. She's dancing around, having to go pee. I'm like, I can't move.
It's like, I want your attention. Come here, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, now your dog's gonna be on a podcast. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the biggest one that really, the number one. Oh, and Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and A Newer, and Heaven, New Heaven. The biggest one that changed my life was David R. Hawkins, and his writings he talks about grief and his perspectives on a higher power, his perspectives on higher consciousness and things like that, really changed my whole perspective of everything. And that was last summer, really, when I had that breakthrough. And yeah.
When did you start writing your book?
Spring of 2020, just after I had my first surgery, because I had emergency surgery shortly after Debbie passed, and I almost lost my life. And I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks there, and then so shortly after that, COVID broke out, and then I decided I was going to take this opportunity with COVID rather than just sitting around, healing and, I made a decision. I'm going to take advantage of this situation because you know what? The world has stopped for me. So it's not how narcissistic, right? But I mean, no, it's just like, I look back at the situation. Everything happened as it should have, right? Debbie passed away at the end of May 2019. I had my surgery at the end of November 2019. I just get healed. COVID breaks out. And I'm able to stay at home, spend time with my children, and focus on their recovery. And I'm able to take my pain and put it onto paper and to be able to help people, if they can just relate, know that they're not alone in their feelings. So, yeah.
Oh God, I can relate to that so much. I was like I got really depressed during my pregnancy. I went through postpartum depression, then COVID hit, and then my brother passed. And it was just like, my brain so badly wants me to sit in self-pity and just feel sorry for myself all day long. It is like a constant fight to pick up my program and like turn to God and meditate is so hard. Being present, I feel like I'm so uncomfortable in my own skin because it's like, I don't know when grief's going to come out. I feel like I don't have control. So all of that's just been so difficult, but so absolutely like imperative for me to stay sober through this. And so, I really appreciate you sharing all those resources that you tapped into, because I know I'm definitely going to look them up because I can use some help for sure.
Yeah. Well, one thing is that it's like by doing the program, has taught me how to face catastrophe with serenity. We all know that phrase, right? And it was only by being aware of having that awareness and that consciousness, that enlightenment that the program provides, right? It opened me up to be able to go deeper. And the depth of understanding and knowledge that I've gained from this, I welcome it. So now talking about, like I had a friend growing up, like we were in grade 6 and we were introduced to each other. I was bullied and I was alone at school and, I had no friends, and then so the teachers brought in this kid, and they're like, well, we think you guys should be friends. And I'm like, okay. So we ended up becoming best of friends until this day. But what it was is that his father had committed suicide and he had witnessed it. So they held him back a year and they brought him to school and they felt that he needed a friend and I needed a friend, right? So, we never talked about his dad until we were 21 years old. Didn't even mention dad out of his mouth, and so I didn't really understand and know my friend that at that depth or level. And, and I seen that through that experience is that, like there was a lot of taboos around it, around suicide. People don't know what to say to you, or some people, they find the pain too great to talk about it. So I'm just trying to let people know it's okay to talk about it. And that's what we did. And that was a big dilemma at the funeral, whether to talk about whether she just passed away, no real reference to whether what happened. And actually the ones that surprised me the most were my daughters. And they said, Dad, I said, no, we didn't commit suicide. She did. She said, she needs to own this, not us. Right? And we're not ashamed of, we're not going to carry that shame around. And I was just like blown away because I had my hand up for, let's not mention it, let's not, but it was my daughters that showed a level of courage and maturity, at 17 and 15 at the time, right?
Mm.
And so,
Yeah, I was actually witnessed that day. Sadly, just the love in the room, and how that, how the universe, the creator and God came through that pastor and delivered that message that day. I understood clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, I again, those words that were said that day were, yeah, incredible.
It was very comforting to know, and sorry.
What
go
were
ahead.
the words? I didn't hear. I wasn't there.
Well, one thing that the pastor for me that really set my heart right is, a lot of people, when it comes to suicide, they worry about what is she in hell, for what she did, right? A lot of people believe that, right? And the pastor, the one thing that he said that really set my heart right, and was okay, was when he quoted a scripture from Romans saying that, and there's nothing you can do on this earth that will take me away from you. Right? Then there's nothing you can do. And so I knew there that she was in the right place. And, and it brought that, if I wouldn't have talked about it, I would have carried that around, that and if the pastor didn't bring it up and talk about it, it would have been something in the back of my mind, right? That's why I put the Raven. I quoted Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, at the beginning of the book. It's about a man grieving the loss of his lovely Lenore. And in flies, he hears a tapping at the door, right? Tap, tap, tap at the door. And he thinks it's Lenore, right? And then he hears a tap at the window, and the raven flies in. And the raven represents thought and memory, which is wisdom. But he starts asking and arguing with the raven. He knows the answers to all the questions. But what this story represents is that his thoughts and memory are what caused his insanity. And all the raven said was nevermore. It was his own mind that drove him to the edge of insanity. And I understand that edge of insanity, right? So, it wasn't Lenore dying. It was his own mind. The way that he perceived it, and the way he thought about it, is what drove him to insanity. And so there's a message in there that, and we all know that message, right? It's, we're, it's in our first step, right? Well, actually, step two. Two, yeah.
Coming to believe, yeah.
I had one sponsor. He told me, he says, what? Oh man, Scott. He says, I'm just going crazy, right? He's like, I'm going absolutely crazy. And I said, well, no, you're not crazy. I said, and he's like, oh, that's good. And he said, you're just insane. So step two, it tells you right there.
I like that.
Yeah, you're not crazy. You're just insane. So accept it and let's move on. Okay. So
that's so beautiful. I love that. We only have a few minutes left. I can't believe how fast this is going by. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on the language around someone passing away of suicide or drug addiction. It's been a big topic lately because there is such a stigma around it. How we talk about it kind of matters in terms of how other people are going to perceive what happened. I know with like DMX passing away, they started calling it a heart attack because calling it a drug addiction was putting the stigma because of his race and everything, that it's not a big deal or he deserved it or something. And I heard something beautiful that stood out to me. It was saying that someone doesn't commit suicide, they die of suicide, or not that they don't commit suicide, but it's an easier way to say it because it doesn't make it her fault. Like she didn't choose this life. You know what I mean? She died of a disease that killed her. And so, or in my case, my cousin had passed away from suicide. And that's when I started, that conversation was coming up. And then with my brother as well, like he died of addiction. He wasn't an addict. He was a person with an addiction. It really helped me. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who's listening and might be struggling with that language. It was something that stood out to me. And I find a little bit of humanity in it that way, because it is a really difficult thing to talk about, because you don't know who you're speaking to and what kind of stigma they have about the situation. For me, I'm proud to be an addict, so I don't care.
Well, the one thing that I find is that I can really, the way that I found to have compassion for Debbie is that from my story of recovery, from my being an alcoholic and been addicted to drugs 20 something years ago, I was in a slow moving suicide. And we all can understand that state of mind, because we are trying to suppress those painful feelings, through alcohol and drugs. And we were committing suicide in a very slow, painful way. And, but by reaching out, talking to somebody and seeking and trying to find the answers is the key. Is the path out of it. There is hope. There is hope. Look, we're a testament to that we survived a slow-moving suicide.
Yeah.
And so there is hope. We're living testaments to surviving the act of suicide. So
that's so powerful. That's exactly what we want to do here, is share the stories of there's a life after addiction, there's a life after grief, there's a life after mental health struggles. Don't give up. You're going to be missing out on something incredible. And I know that's been true in my life, because I had suicidal thoughts before getting sober, because it just feels insurmountable. How do you make up for everything you've done? And how could you ever feel good again? Those thoughts are in my head. So I can understand why someone would go that far, but I just want everyone listening to know there's so much to live for, and you can get through anything, and you can grow through it, and you can become a human being that you never thought possible for yourself. So
and I think it's important too, and people talk about it as a past tense, and I need to bring it into the present tense too, because I've been definitely suicidal as a teenager, daily thoughts, definitely am a miracle sitting here, but also my recovery, drug, alcohol free, booze free, smoke free, vegan. I've been in dark moments in my recovery. And I know I'm not alone with that. And I know that you'll agree that we have that thinking, that process that happens within us, being alcoholics and addicts, myself. I just go to these places sometimes that can be really, really dark. And, I'm grateful that the program for myself and staying connected and having accountability team around me that checks in on me, that knows me, that I'm, I stay connected. I stay in the middle of my recovery program. I'm able to get those people around me to be able to pick me up and sense and know when I'm in those moments. So I love working with other people in the program. If you're out there and you have somebody thinking about somebody, if you have that thought, that intuition inside, but I wonder, it doesn't matter how sober they are or what they're doing. If it could be a neighbor, it could be somebody else's, pick up that phone, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in those moments that the divine intervention has happened because of somebody making that call. I had a girl at one point, not too long ago, that I had that experience, and I'd never heard from her other than seeing her in the community. And she actually wrote me and said, "How are you? On this particular morning, I woke up and I just did not want to put my feet on the ground." And I thought, what? How am I? I've been thinking about you and wanted to let you know that I love you. And I was just like, what? This is an odd thing. So I wrote her back, and from that conversation, really changed the projection of my life, no question about it, in that time. So yeah, it is a difficult topic, but we need to talk about it. And I really thank you for coming and being so raw and open and courageous and listening to that inner intuition, that said, go to that coffee shop, write the book. Thank you for the people around you that encouraged you, your family, your children. Thanks for listening to them, because I'm telling you, this book has to be in people's hands. It really does.
Well,
it's
thank you.
How can we get it in our hands? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have it.
Well, Suzanne, you can
Okay.
send her a
Na-na-na-na.
picture. Well, for $25.99, no, but no.
is it available online or?
Yeah, we're going to be. I'm just finishing up the editing and getting it ready for to be self-published. So we're going to be uploading it soon, and I'm going to be doing an audiobook, and
Yes.
and so everybody that I've read it to so far says, Scott, you need to read it. So I'm considering being the narrator for the audiobook too as well.
I'm here to let you know for sure from reading it, hearing you read that. And I got cut off here. My Wi-Fi was here, but I was having you still on my phone here. I listened to every word. Hearing your audio, I can't agree more. It was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to start a series. I'm going to, my daughter and I, Caitlin, the older one, we might do a daily daughter book, and then we want to do maybe a daily dad cookbook, for new dads, like dads all of a sudden single dads that, okay, guys, we don't want our children to die of scurvy. This is what some very good basic foods to eat, easy meals. So a couple of ladies in the program that are caterers are like, yes, we'd love to help you. And
Oh, wow.
and then I'm going to do, now moving forward, I'm going to write a book called Daily Dad and Dating After Death and Divorce. Right? And talk about what to look out for, if you've been out of the dating for decades and you want to move forward and find new love and have a beautiful life. Because you know what? I still have 30, 40, 50 years of life left, I mean, and you know what? And I'll be damned if I'm going to have an amazing life. And I'm having an amazing life right now.
Yes.
And so it's full of opportunities and love and connection. My daughters and I, we have a connection of honesty, openness. Suzanne, you need to read the book.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
Stop! Don't give me any spoilers. No more spoilers.
I'm not going to.
Thank you, because I want to. I'm not kidding you. It's really good, and I want to know simply because, of course, seek purpose. So, in a nutshell, how are you seeking purpose today in your life? Like, what's your go-to to put your feet on the floor?
Well, seeking purpose, like turning my pain into purpose. I listened to the American president, Joe Biden, and I recognize when he lost his wife and daughter, and when he talked about to his nation, saying, he talked about that black hole in the middle of his chest, right? When you look at that empty chair at the kitchen table, and you see that. I mean, our society right now, because of what we're going through, there's a lot of grief and pain out there now. And so my purpose is to help people through their grief, and by setting up I'm going to do some podcasts, and coming on your podcast, writing the books, doing the audio books, and it seems that when I put that love out to the world, what I put out comes back, and there are amazing opportunities that are coming back to me I've only sent out my manuscript to about 15 people, and you're one of them. and amazing things are already happening. I can't believe it. It's so when we pursue life from a higher level, what we put out to the world, it will come back.
Is this your first publicity for the book that you're doing, or have you gone on other podcasts, other shows yet?
Well, I went on one podcast before with a lady that was a dating and relationship coach, and she wanted me to talk about change. Well, let me tell you about change. We're
gonna have to have you come back because, man, we are like almost 10 minutes over, and we
Okay.
definitely hear you're part of the Seek Purpose family now. We
Yeah.
are going to continue to follow your journey,
Yeah.
and we're here to support you, encourage you, do whatever we can to help people connect with
Thank
you and your purpose, your passions. And we just thank you so much for coming, because
Yeah.
man, just how your message popped up, the minute that it popped up, was a divine, definitely a divine led. That you should.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, you're not alone, right? So, and then, so,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just see huge things for you. Like, I don't know.
Thank
I
you.
feel something big coming for sure. And don't forget
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
gonna-
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Well, I thought it was-
everybody, thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, you go for it.
Well, I was very nervous coming on here. As I was coming on the Seek Purpose, podcast here, and I'm like, oh man, I was like all ready. I was getting ready. I had my dinner. I cleaned up, and I'm gonna go and lay out my yoga mat. I'm gonna meditate for a bit. I'm gonna think about what I'm gonna say, and then she's like, we're on in 5 minutes. What?
Oh my God.
Oh, this is so much for preparing,
Welcome to Seek Purpose, because that's what we're all about.
Yeah.
Trust me, what goes on behind here, like we have this little mute button. We've got people screaming sometimes. Open up that door. Yeah, anyway.
I even bought a mic for it. So I was
Oh,
like,
man. Oh my God. Just awesome. Well, we just
Thank you so much.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Scott. And all the love to you and the girls. And oh my gosh, I'm excited to keep
well, the girls are going to be, because they want to hear this podcast. So they'll be
of course.
adding themselves probably tomorrow when it comes out. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
All right,
thank
everybody.
you.
If you missed any of this, you can catch the replay tomorrow on all your favorite podcasting apps. Make sure you subscribe, leave us a comment, share this with anyone that you know that needs to hear this message. And yeah, we're so excited to have all of you as part of this community, and we'll see you here next Monday.